Hello, everybody. I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks lunchtime streaming show. And we watch old 16mm films, and that was a Castle film. Castle was this company that did some theatrical releases, not features but shorts. But mostly they're known for the home market. They distributed 16, 8mm, Super 8 to homes via camera shops, their catalog, places like that. So if you're out in the world and you go to an antique store that has a little tiny Laurel and Hardy film that's selling for $50, that might be a Castle film. The shorts like Mr. Be Natural, I don't think that's a Castle film. I'm sorry. I'm looking to my comments, which I shouldn't be doing. But no, I believe that was distributed by some sponsored film industrial filmmaker. All right, let's learn about basic fibers and cloth. That's what we're here for, right? Oh yeah, happy December. Let's learn about basic fibers and cloth. Enjoy.
After school one day, Miss Harvey, the home economics teacher, is expecting Jane Williams and Betty Randall. In Home Ec Club tomorrow, they plan to discuss how different fibers affect the nature of different cloth materials. Oh, here they are now. Betty has prepared the demonstrations for the talk Jane will give. First, they'll show a graphic story of textile fibers, the major fibers: cotton, wool, linen, silk, and rayon. This chart summarizes where they come from, tells how long they are comparatively, and shows samples of the fibers in the natural state. It also shows samples of the finished materials. Jane wants to check on why some are called filaments. Is it the difference in length? Yes, these natural wool fibers are quite short. In contrast, silk and rayon strands in the natural state are very long and are called filaments. Sometimes they are cut into short lengths in manufacturing and then spun into yarn or thread. You've heard of spun rayon. So filament really indicates the length of the fibers used in spinning. Miss Harvey offers to show them the major fibers under a microscope. When the fibers are magnified, you can see their individual natures and understand why one cloth differs from another. Take cotton, for example. This is a single cotton fiber. It is rather flat and a little twisted like a ribbon. And this is wool fiber. It is naturally crimped and has tiny scales on it. That crimp is important in helping to make tight, close twists when the fibers are spun into yarn or thread. So the crimp of wool and the twist of cotton are important to the spinning of yarn. On the other hand, linen has no natural crimp or twist. It is a smooth, jointed rod, almost like bamboo. Silk is even smoother, and there's nothing to help hold it in a twist in spinning. Acetate rayon is like a smooth glass rod. It is the most difficult to spin into tight yarn. Even though the fibers of wool are short, they have that crimp and scales which help keep them twisted together. Twisting or spinning the short fibers of wool binds the ends down and makes a strong thread. Betty finds that twisting cotton is easy because of the natural twist of the fiber, and it makes the strand strong. These twisted fibers or yarns impart certain characteristics to the cloth. For example, how do samples of the same weight and weave absorb water? The first two, linen and cotton, will become heavy with water first. They make good towels because they're the most absorbent. Silk is next, followed by regenerated rayon. These two take up little water. But the wool and acetate rayon float on top and absorb practically no water. The scales on the wool have trapped thousands of little air bubbles which keep water out and float the wool. But when we push it underwater, the air bubbles are forced out. So wool actually absorbs moisture quickly when the air bubbles are gone. It is now heavy with water. What about the acetate rayon? What happens when we force it underwater? Look at that. The water runs off it. Acetate rayon absorbs very little water. And how different the various materials feel. The wool is soaking wet, and yet it's almost warm. That's why wool is popular for bathing suits. But linen and cotton are cold and clammy. Silk is more like wool. It holds a lot of moisture, but doesn't feel very wet. We have seen how fibers take up water. It will be interesting to see later how they dry. Betty is wondering if wool loses its strength when wet, as rayon does. Why, it's like a rubber band. Wool will stretch almost half its length before it breaks. Silk will stretch only about 1/5. And cotton simply won't stretch. It's strong, but won't stretch. This basic elasticity of fibers has a lot to do with another important thing, resistance to wrinkling. Jane is trying to crease a piece of woolen, a firm worsted. This fabric, made of the elastic wool fibers, won't wrinkle easily. And silk also resists wrinkling. It, too, is an elastic fiber. Because silk and wool are elastic, clothing made from these fibers wrinkles less and gives long wear. Linen, however, wrinkles easily. It has very little stretch, the same as cotton. So, clothing made with these two seldom resists wrinkling. Now, what about rayon? Rayon fabrics made from the original long filaments crease very quickly and easily. But here is a piece of spun rayon. Remember? Spun rayon, made by spinning short fibers of rayon into yarn. Spun rayon fabrics are quite crease resistant, so Jane and Betty want to bring that point out. Rayon spun from short fibers is a softer, crease-resistant cloth. Remember the air bubbles that were forced out of the wool? The wool fibers hold pockets of still air to form insulation and prevent the escape of body heat. And if the material is fuzzy or napped, it is even warmer, because more air is trapped in the fuzzed-up fibers. It seems that wool fibers make excellent cloth, but what about soilability and washability? Tomorrow, Jane will show the club these test samples. Each little book of cloth is arranged the same way. 3 samples cut to same size before washing. Here's untreated wool first. The bottom sample has never been washed or cleaned. The middle piece was washed in mild soap and lukewarm water, and there's little shrinkage. See the shrinkage and the fading? The top sample was washed in strong soap and hot water. Woolen fabrics made with scaly fibers catch dirt. Some wool garments require dry cleaning. Others can be washed with mild soap and cool water. Betty notices how smooth the silk samples are, which makes silk less likely to catch and hold dirt. Silk won't shrink much even if washed with mild soap and warm water. But hot water is bad for silk. Destroys its luster. Linen can stand soap and hot water without shrinkage. What's more, it doesn't soil easily due to the long, smooth fibers. Cotton, however, catches dirt readily, but it's easy to wash. Jane's freshly washed cotton dress feels and smells clean. Laundering rayon deserves special attention. Wet rayon should be handled gently, lifted all in a bunch like this, because wet rayon stretches badly, especially rayon knit materials. If rayon is dried, rolled in a towel, there's less chance of it stretching out of shape. Some rayon and certain other materials should be dry cleaned. Keep in mind, though, if you dry clean at home, read the instructions on the cleaner carefully. Now, what about those samples that have been drying? Remember the order in which they absorbed water? Linen and cotton first, followed by silk and regenerated rayon, and then wool and acetate rayon. The water simply ran off the acetate rayon. It didn't really absorb any. Now it is perfectly dry. The pure linen sample was most absorbent, remember? But it is now just as dry as the rayon. Cotton, too, was very absorbent. And cotton can be treated so it dries almost as quickly as linen. But this untreated sample is still damp. Jane can't get over the fact that the wool can still be so wet and yet not feel cold. Uh-oh, time to go, girls. But that's all right. They have enough useful information for a dozen short talks. How about you? What have you learned about fibers? Doesn't it sound interesting? Wouldn't you like to know more?
Like to know more. Boy, I got a bunch of films. Somebody said, hey, haven't we already watched this one? So I've got Yarn and Cloth. I have the basic fibers in cloth. I have there's another cloth film. Where is it? Let's see if I can find it. What is Cloth? Oh, I have the When Your Clothing Burns. Have I shown that one? When Your Clothing Burns? I don't think I have. I don't know. Do you want to? Would you want to see that today? Answer in the comments, and maybe I'll tag it on at the end. We Your Clothing Burn. Think about it. Okay. Let us learn about banks and credit. What's interesting about this film, in my mind, and I watched a little bit of it, is here's the services that a bank offers you. And it's like, do they really offer us these services, or is there some other aspect to how they make money nowadays? So here it is, banks and credit. Enjoy.
We're going to look inside a commercial bank and learn how banks serve us. We'll find out how Nancy Wallace is helping herself and helping the bank to fulfill its purposes. By looking in on Frank Hamilton, we'll learn the meaning of credit. And by following along with Richard Morton, we'll see how bank credit serves the world of business. Behind the scenes, in the bookkeeping department, we'll be concerned with the bank's records of various depositors' accounts and with the bank's own balance sheet. Let's look at the balance sheet this way. When the bank started, its assets were only the cash contributed by the stockholders who organized the bank. This was balanced, on the ownership side, by the capital stock issued to the stockholders. Some of the cash assets were converted into a bank building and furnishings and special equipment. The bank was then ready to receive deposits. Here, Nancy Wallace is depositing $5 in her savings account. She probably thinks of this only as a means of helping herself. building up a reserve fund to meet future needs and emergencies by putting her money in a safe place where each deposit is insured up to a maximum of $5,000. Even so, she's helping her bank to serve her community, for she and hundreds of other depositors help to build up the amount of cash which the bank has available to conduct its business. Deposits appear on the other side of the balance as a liability because the bank must stand ready to return an equal amount of money on demand. Deposits in savings accounts are called time deposits because the depositors intend to leave the money in the bank for some time. But most of the deposits are demand deposits, upon which the depositor can write checks when he makes payments to others. Such deposits are made in commercial or personal accounts, often called checking accounts. Frank Hamilton is depositing some money, and also a check, his paycheck. On the deposit slip, the amount of the money and the check are added together, just as though it were all money. And yet, a check is not money. It is an instrument for the transfer of credit, which is a substitute for money. What does that mean? Well, how would you like to have to get up every morning in time to pay the milkman? To save us this bother, the dairy sells its products on credit, and at the end of the month sends a bill for the price of the milk delivered during the month. This is called personal credit or consumer credit. But now, Mr. Hamilton still doesn't want to go to the dairy office to pay his bill. So he will mail them a check for the amount of money he owes them. And this is where the bank comes back into the picture. On his job, Mr. Hamilton himself is paid not in money, but by check. He deposits his paychecks in the bank. He receives no money for his work. But in the bookkeeping department of the bank, the amount of the deposit is credited to Mr. Hamilton's account. In other words, it is added to the amount of his credit in the bank. Meanwhile, the amount of the check is deducted from the amount of credit available to Mr. Hamilton's employer. Thus, the check has served as an instrument for the transfer of credit from the Central Manufacturing Company to Mr. Hamilton. In addition to personal checks, there are several other types. A certified check is a personal check that is guaranteed by the bank on which it is drawn. A cashier's check is one drawn by a bank on its own funds in the bank. A bank draft is a check drawn by a bank on funds it has on deposit in another bank. By means of these various credit instruments, a bank deals much more in credit than it does in money. Now, a bank not only assists in the transfer of credit, but it also creates credit. To see how this is done, we'll follow Richard Morton into the loan department of the bank. Mr. Morton owns a hardware store in town. He has his bank account here, and he is well known to the officials of the bank as an honest, conscientious, capable businessman. He explains his business. He has recently purchased about $2,000 worth of goods for his store from the Central Manufacturing Company. To encourage prompt payment, the manufacturer offers him a discount if he pays the bill within 10 days. Mr. Morton would like to take advantage of this saving, but right now he does not have enough spare cash or bank credit. He wants to borrow that much from the bank for 30 days. Since Mr. Morton is known to the bank as a reliable man, and since he has brought along records to show that the financial condition of his business is sound, the banker can feel reasonably certain that Mr. Morton will be able to repay the loan when it comes due. So the banker is glad to make the loan. Mr. Morton writes out a promissory note. This is a promise to pay the money back to the bank at a certain time, in this case, in 30 days. As so often happens in a bank, no money changes hands. The amount Mr. Morton has borrowed is simply credited to his account, minus the interest which the bank charges for this service. When interest is deducted in advance, we call it discounting a note, and the interest is called discount. Other notes provide that the borrower receives the full amount and pays it back, plus interest. Either way, the interest that it collects on loans is one of the bank's principal sources of income. Now Mr. Morton has obtained his loan. He has increased his bank credit by nearly $2,000. But this credit was not transferred to him from some other account, so where did it come from? The bank always has on hand a reserve of money received from the stockholders and depositors. On the basis of these cash reserves, a bank can create credit. As a result of the loan to Mr. Morton, the asset, loans and discounts, is added. To balance this, the deposits figure is increased by the amount of the loan which is left with the bank. So, besides providing a safe place for depositing money and making it easy for people to transfer credit from one to another, a bank serves a community by making additional credit available for many purposes. For a family to build a new home, for a merchant to enlarge and remodel his store, for a farmer to purchase new equipment, for a manufacturer to meet his payroll during slack selling periods, for a family to meet the cost of an expensive illness, and for many other good reasons why people are always needing more money, more credit than they have immediately available. Since most of these transactions involve the transfer of credit rather than cash, they increase the bank's deposits much more than they decrease its cash. Consequently, the bank needs to keep comparatively little cash on hand. By proper timing, new loans are made at about the same rate that old ones are repaid. For instance, when Mr. Morton's customers pay their bills, he deposits their checks in his bank account. Most of the credit Mr. Morton borrowed from the bank, he transferred to the Central Manufacturing Company to pay his bill. His subsequent deposits build his credit up so that by the end of the 30-day period, he can repay the bank the credit he borrowed. In exchange for this check, he receives back his promissory note marked paid in full. Still, for all the work this credit has done, it has had little effect on the bank's cash. What then does the bank do with the rest of the cash the depositors have left with it? Some of it is put to work for the federal government, and in exchange for it, the bank holds bonds and other government obligations. Some of it is put to work for the community in which the bank is located, in exchange for municipal bonds and securities. Much of it goes to build up the industrial might of the nation, in exchange for corporate securities. And finally, some of the cash goes into Federal Reserve bank stock. Our Federal Reserve System serves as a banker's bank, facilitating the transfer of credit among member banks throughout the nation in the same way that each bank helps its customers to transfer credit. So, when Nancy Wallace deposited $5 in the bank, she was not only helping herself, she was helping the bank to create credit used in carrying on the business of her community and her country and her world. The credit thus created is far greater in amount than all the money in the world. And this credit is the cornerstone of our world structure of commerce and industry, working for us in the mass production of goods, in the transportation of goods throughout the world, in the building of our cities and towns and homes, in the giant works of our federal government, in the conveniences of daily living, and in the protection of our health and our lives. All this is done with credit, credit created by the bank out of the deposits made by all of us.
I've been thinking about banks recently as AV Geeks is looking to switch to a new bank because our old bank, who we used to love, really kind of doesn't give a crap about us. We don't make enough money for them, so they kind of, we always get, they just don't care. And they try to upsell us on services, but the previous services aren't great, so it's a personal account's one thing, you get nickel and dime with that, but man, a small business account, forget it. There's all sorts of little things that they charge you for. It's really frustrating. Anyhow, I'm gonna take a chance here. Got a film on the on the scanner. The subject matter of the film I'm not gonna talk about, but there is a literally, there's a boy's butt in it, a little boy's butt. We're okay with little boys' butts, and because that in the past, this film was made when Pampers during prime time would be constantly showing infants' butts. So this is a toddler's butt, but there you go. Anyways, enjoy. And I said, I won't announce the name of the film until you see the title. All right, bye.
All right.
This is a film about sexuality.
You mean it's about sex?
No. Well, yes and no. Sexuality is an integral part of everyone's personality. It expresses our humanness, our maleness, our femaleness. Because it is a component of personality, we express it all our lives, from infancy through the advanced years.
Everybody thinks about sex.
Right. And sexuality includes how we feel about ourselves and how we view others.
Okay, Tommy, just as soon as we finish unpacking the picnic. George, hi. Really good to meet you. See you. Nice day.
You got the whole family out here? Oh.
I think we're going to have fun. Oh, I think we are too. We expect to go down to the lake a little bit later on.
Good. Did your poster here?
Oh,
Yeah, they came to visit
Oh,
us this
that's
weekend.
nice.
Isn't that nice?
Good. Yeah, that's nice.
What are you doing? Well, we're going to Tommy, come back here. You can't run around like that. Oh, honey,
I'll
please
go
don't
get
put a
him,
bathing
yeah.
suit on him. Anything like that.
People sure have different reactions towards sexuality.
Sure. We're all the product of our experiences. Expressing sexuality usually involves personal and cultural standards, and they vary widely.
What's taboo for one person may be perfectly okay for someone else.
Sexuality is expressed in many ways and often is not recognized for what it is. Love is a very special feeling that most of us have been learning about since we were born. Babies enjoy being held and cuddled, and they take pleasure in touching others and themselves.
Most of us don't outgrow liking to touch and be touched.
Of course not. Touching may show love, affection, or just a sense of togetherness.
Curiosity, that's a natural part of sexuality.
What's the top part covered up? Daddy, I have to go to the bathroom.
Okay, Tommy, but you don't have to tell everybody.
I wanted to.
You wanted to. That's what I thought.
Little children have no sense of privacy. But later, privacy becomes very important.
I think so. No, this one. Boys aren't supposed to be in here.
Oh, a little confusion here. Wait a minute. You go into this one here, okay? You come with me. We go in this
And
one.
me.
Until boys become interested in girls, they usually play pretty much with other boys.
And girls tend to play with other little girls.
But that also changes as they get older.
It sure does. But until they do, children enjoy secrecy and camaraderie, mostly with those of their own sex. This is a time for very special best friends.
Oh boy, the teen years. New bodies, new feelings. Is this a complicated time in life? This is a time when we develop new ways of relating to each other.
It's a time when friendships take on new dimensions too, both with those of our own sex and as we become, oh, so very aware of the other sex. And it's not easy when everyone is growing at a different rate. Breasts and body hair develop, body conformation changes.
And boys have to put up with a deepening of the voice. Sometimes it's manly, and then suddenly it becomes embarrassingly high-pitched.
No matter what I do, I just never look right.
Oh, Jenny, you look fine.
I think I look awful all the time. You look so good all the time, you know?
What about all the boys you got?
Becoming comfortable with a new body and new feelings is an important part of growing up. But often it's difficult to accept ourselves as we are, in advertising, in the movies, everywhere. We are bombarded with an unrealistic cultural image of the perfect body.
I see what you mean. Most people don't come close to the image. Young, slender, with perfect hair, skin, and teeth.
But we all have the integrity of our own sexuality, even if we don't possess bodies right out of Playgirl or Playboy.
So, what do you want to talk about?
Well, I really like being with you.
I'm glad you finally told me. I like being with you, too.
First love.
No, first romantic love. And this is a time when boy-girl relationships are usually shy, awkward, but often very intense. We are so anxious to make the right impression.
And the slightest mistake is devastating.
Oh, are you all right?
Yeah, I could do it okay, but I guess my hands were a little sweaty.
Saying the right thing, knowing how to act, feeling comfortable. It's not easy. We all have to learn how to be comfortable with the other sex.
Sometimes building our own fantasies is much easier. In daydreaming, we can always say and do the perfect things. Getting turned on by looking at a picture, or just seeing another person, is a common experience of teens and adults alike.
Fantasies can include imagining sexual encounters, and this often includes touching our own bodies, including the genitals. It's called masturbation. It's natural. Most people do it. Throughout life, masturbation can be a release for pent-up sexual needs.
But when two people experience the chemistry of sexual feelings, there's more to consider.
Most people, men and women, have religious or moral values about sexual behavior. Each individual must decide what's right.
Stay here for a while.
Okay, but just for a little while. We've got about 5 miles. Mike,
I'm sorry. I thought you loved me.
I do love you. It's just that I want to love you without having sex. Okay?
Okay.
Decisions about sex are important. How far, with whom, when. Mature relationships are built around good communications. Honestly sharing feelings and values can avoid exploiting or being exploited.
You play a terrific game.
Yeah, my tennis isn't bad either.
Finally, mature sexuality, when everyone is comfortable just being themselves.
Not exactly. With maturity, people do find it easier to be themselves. But even when there are strong attractions, a desire to touch that special person in an intimate way, consideration for the feelings of each other is just as important as it was in youth.
All set?
Hey, I've got a great idea.
Another game of tennis.
No, that's not exactly what I had in mind.
Intense, passionate sex is great, but there's more to a mature relationship than, well, just sex.
Exactly. And that's what this film has been all about. Sexuality is part of everyone's day-to-day living. It means being comfortable with ourselves and with others as sexual beings. Even in the 40s and on into the 50s and 60s, when the childbearing years are behind us, we enjoy touching, loving, sharing, sex. For people with healthy feelings toward sex and sexuality, physical intimacy can provide pleasure into the 60s, 70s, even 80s. It starts at birth and is a part of our personality long before our bodies are ready for sexual activity. It's how we feel about ourselves, our maleness, our femaleness, and how we relate to those of our own sex and the opposite sex. It's love and respect, pleasure and chemistry.
It's called sexuality, and it never, ever ends.
Going on in that park. Holy cow. Sorry. Finishing some toast. Hold on. Let me do this off. Lunch. So, but what a great film. You know, it's positive sexuality, Planned Parenthood, 1980. Yeah, you know, and it got a little iffy. I don't think the homeschoolers are watching the show anymore. I haven't heard from them in almost a year. So I was like, yeah, let's show it. Whatever. But yeah, pretty great. And I certainly have another film that I could show, which would be which is more explicit, to the point where I've shown it to people, friends, and it was so explicit that people were like, I don't think we should be watching this. So I'm not going to show you that. But I am going to show you this. I mentioned it, and I don't think that we had actually shown it. But here is When Your Clothing Burns. Enjoy.
Baby skin. Pink, beautiful you baby skin. Skin that just begged to be anointed, bathed, powdered, and fondled. It was a great feeling. It must have been. But so much has happened in the intervening years, it's hard to remember. Our poor skin. From infancy onward, it's all downhill. At 4, it's punctured. At 9, it's inflamed. At 10, it's torn. At 12, it's attacked. At 14, it's frozen. At 16, it's tortured. At 18, it's assaulted. At 20, it's overheated. At 21 plus, it's moisturized and moisturized and pounded and pounded and pounded.
There! Oh, we hit that. Oh, who's going to marry Columbine? I'm going to be the one that...
When one marionette hits another, we laugh. It's make-believe. There's no pain and there's no injury. After all, papier-mâché isn't skin. No matter how old we get, puppets continue to fascinate us. At the merest flick of the wrist, we can make them tumble, bow, do almost anything we do as people.
It happened in my backyard in early October. It was like a foggy day like it was today, and it happened on the left side of the back gate, almost to the right center of the back of the shed. Well, me and my brother, you know, playing soccer in the backyard, you know, having a good time. My brother kicked the ball down to the shed door. So I went down and chased after the ball, and then as soon as I got to the door of the shed, I smelled some smoke. So I went around the back. I saw some burning grass and fire and all that. So I turned around and I knew there was a fire extinguisher in the shed, so I tried to open the door, but it was locked. So I came around and I was trying to stamp it out. And then I, you know, got my pants caught on fire on both legs, so then I was rolling the grass until I got to my porch, and then my brother was calling for my mother, and she saw what happened. And she rushed down the stairs, and she saw the rug laying on the floor, so she grabbed it up. And she came out of the door, and then she wrapped me in it. And then I was in a state of shock when I was under that rug, so I really didn't feel nothing. I had 3 operations, and before the first one, I still, you know, I felt a lot of pain. And after the first one, I felt pain. And after the second one, I felt pain because they didn't put skin on my legs. And then on the 3rd operation, they put, you know, skin from my hips onto the leg and stitched it up. And after that operation, I didn't feel anything. And I was in the hospital about 7 weeks. And after I had that 3rd operation, I still had to be treated in the basins. And they put gauze ointment on it, and they took it off, and they put it on, and took it off, until I didn't have to, you know, wear it or go in the tub anymore until the last time. And then that last day I was in the hospital, you know, I was so excited to get out, I didn't even eat lunch or breakfast.
We can make marionettes do anything, even catch fire. After all, we hold the strings. But if a puppet's clothes catch fire, we can build a new one. Papier-mâché isn't very expensive, and we can replace it painlessly. But people aren't built of papier-mâché. Our most vulnerable citizens, young children and the elderly, are delicate packages of flesh and bone encased in skin which is very fragile. Almost 1/2 of all deaths by fire occur to these very young and very old. In America today, more children die from burns than from all infectious diseases or cancer.
The skin is a complex organ, and I think most people don't think about it as being an organ. They think about the liver and the spleen as being an organ. The skin is a collection of cells whose job it is to encase the body. When it does this, it has a variety of functions which most of us don't think about. I think sometimes we only think that the skin is there to get tanned if we get out in the sun. I think better to think about it as a gate. It lets some things in and some things out. Some it stops completely and some it lets in a little bit. Just think about what it does. Keeps bacteria out, keeps fungus out, keeps you from banging yourself. You can feel where you are, lets you live in temperatures, high temperatures, low temperatures, same person. Keeps water in, keeps water out. Now, if we're talking about severe burns, particularly in the elderly and in the children, who are the thin-skinned members of our society, their skin is thinner. And the same amount of heat that would give a second-degree burn or a partial thickness burn in a healthy young adult will give the children or the elderly a third-degree or full-thickness burn. Now, if you take away enough skin, the body will die. It can't defend itself. Like any other organ, if you take away too much, the body won't survive. I think that most people have the idea that we as doctors, particularly we as plastic surgeons, can fix it so that there won't be any scarring, if in fact you do survive this severe burn. But that's not true. The skin graft marks are permanent, the scarring is permanent, leaves quite an impression. It's got to be the most severe of all trauma, of all injuries. The severe burn, I think, is the worst. No question. From a medical standpoint, prevention is far better than treatment.
When you're a puppet, you have no choices. Someone pulls your strings and you react. But when you're a person, the choice is in your hands. You can make the decisions which will avoid the pain, the disfigurement, the lost months and economic hardships which are caused by fire accidents. Because Americans like clothing, this country has created a remarkable apparel industry. In variety, design, wearability, and economy, it is incomparable in the world. Wool from our plains, cotton from our fields, a multitude of man-made fibers from our laboratories, all are fashioned into clothing for every income, every season, every taste, and every age. Since our physical and mental resources decline as we become elderly, it is not surprising that more older people die from burns than any other segment of our society. One of the most deadly causes of this tragedy is the ignition of upholstery in chairs and couches by dropped smoking materials. When upholstery burns, clothing is often ignited. The elderly do not yet have easy access to flame-resistant nightwear. Companies which are manufacturing such garments must be supported by the consumer. Educators and advertisers must help to inform the buying public of the need for such protection. We buy the clothes, we hand them down, we save to buy more. And we almost never remember that they are all destructible. All clothing, natural fiber and man-made, can and will burn. Clothing is the skin outside our skin. And when our clothing burns, we burn. Every year, almost 1 million fires occur in our homes. And every year, almost 100,000 children suffer the agony of burns when their clothing catches fire. How then can we best protect our children from death and injury by fire? One way is to dress them in clothing which is flame-resistant. All clothing will burn if subjected to enough heat. But clothing which is inherently flame-resistant or which is treated with a flame-retardant substance will burn a lot slower. This child's robe has been made flame-resistant in order to meet the U.S. standard for flammability of children's nightwear. This applies to all sleepwear from size 0 to size 14, thereby protecting children through age 12. The flame retardant on the garment acts to keep the fire from spreading. When the ignition source is removed, the fire on a flame-resistant garment will go out. Since no similar protection is federally required for clothing other than children's sleepwear, finding flame-resistant garments is often a chore. However, some retailers now offer such treated clothing, and more will do so if the American public demands it. When you do find a flame-resistant garment, it is important that you make certain to follow the instructions for proper care. If you do, the garment will remain flame-resistant despite frequent launderings. Whenever you can, use a phosphate detergent. If phosphate detergents are not sold in your area, use a heavy-duty detergent instead. Wash the garment at home rather than send it to a commercial laundry. Since hot water sometimes wrinkles and shrinks flame-resistant fabrics, use warm water when you launder. American manufacturers are eager to make and sell the kinds of clothes the public wants. However, few voices have been demanding clothing which is safe as well as fashionable. No flame-resistant agent has yet been developed which can make cotton polyester fabrics flame-resistant while retaining the fabric qualities we desire. Research by government and industry continues, but in today's market, most clothing remains untreated and flammable. Nevertheless, there are things you can do right now which will help protect you from clothing fires. Select heavier rather than lighter fabrics. Lighter fabrics burn more swiftly. If you choose clothes which are more tightly woven, your chances of avoiding serious injury are greater. Be aware that wool will burn more slowly than cotton. If you choose clothes which have smoother surfaces, you are giving yourself an extra edge of safety. Like all natural fabrics, all man-made fabrics will burn. Some, like 100% polyesters and some nylons, will retreat, slowing the fire and melting. Other mixtures of natural and man-made fibers will both melt and burn rapidly. If you avoid fabrics with fluffy high pile, you are less likely to suffer damaging and painful burns. All clothing will burn, and some fabrics are more flammable than others. Must we then give up using these valuable fabrics? The answer is no. For today, right now, we can achieve realistic protection without losing all the clothing fabrics we so enjoy. For the fact is that the degree to which our clothing burns is more determined by what we do than by what we wear. What we do mostly at home. Since kitchens are the natural hub for family activity, it is there that 2 out of every 3 fires in the home occur. Nothing is more commonplace than our daily kitchen activities. Yet how many of us realize that wearing a flowing blouse or robe can be a lethal act if we are working near fire? When you are preparing food on a stove, wear clothing that is close to the body. Moving toward warmth is a human instinct. Elderly people particularly tend to be chilly as old age slows blood circulation. But using a cooking stove for warmth can start a flash fire that can kill. The glow of a charcoal fire, the flick of a lighter, the flare of a match, the ignition of a gas burner, all are delightful surprises to a child. But delight can turn to tragedy in an instant. Matches must always be kept well out of the reach of young children. Bathrooms and bedrooms are deceptively innocent places, yet even here, fire can be a real hazard. Your bedroom is the second most vulnerable place in your home where fire accidents occur. Space heaters should be placed where people do not brush by them. Make certain that curtains and drapes are kept well clear of the appliance. Check your heaters and do it regularly. Beds are for sleeping, not smoking. Although government standards require that our mattresses be flame resistant, no such standard applies to our sheets and blankets. When they are ignited by an ash or a dropped match, they burn. and the person in bed burns too. Older children, particularly boys, often become fire victims outside the home. Flammable liquids like gasoline, kerosene, and lighter fluid are frequently involved. The fumes from flammable liquids are easily ignited. The resulting flash fire can make your child's clothing a torch. When his clothing burns, he will burn too. His skin is irreplaceable. Doing the right thing after a burn can help him avoid further injury and pain. Remove the source of the fire and make certain that all glowing fabric is extinguished. Quickly soak the burn in cool water and cover the damaged skin with a clean cloth or sheet. If he is scalded, remove the hot, wet clothing. And as soon as possible, get him to a doctor.
Well, it was a very terrifying thing to have your clothes catch on fire. There isn't any time to think. The way it happened was I was standing in front of the stove, and I didn't realize anything was happening. And I had finished cooking, so I wasn't thinking about that. And evidently the flame traveled up the tails of my apron until it hit the fabric, and then that just burst into flame. And suddenly this tremendous pain was attacking me, and I turned and I saw the flames, and that frightened me. And I knew you weren't supposed to run, but I had to run because the pain was so intense. It was almost as if a wild animal were attacking me and clawing me. I had read that you shouldn't go outside, and yet I was running right for the front door. But I stopped, and I remembered that you were supposed to roll in a rug. Well, the idea of that was quite frightening because I didn't want to push the flame into my body. But I did it and pulled the rug, this little throw rug around me, lay down on the floor, and it did smother the flames.
Running fans flames, adding oxygen to the fire. It can make small burns into fatal burns. In order to extinguish the fire, drop immediately to the ground and roll. Men, women, and children are not mindless puppets. We can seek out clothing for our children and our elderly, which is flame resistant. We can choose to wear appropriate close-fitting clothing, which reduces the hazard of fire accidents. We can teach our families that smoking combined with drinking creates an environment that burns people. We can be vigilant with matches, open flames, and flammable liquids. Unlike a papier-mâché puppet, this child has a brain that thinks and a skin that feels. One day he will hold the power to make the choices which will keep him safe. Until then, he is a fragile package of flesh and blood and bone. A fragile package. He mustn't be lost in a fire.
What, may I ask, is a... My dear child, we haven't had school or books in ages.
No school? Really?
Why don't you get rid of that school book? You can drop them in here.
It'll get all burned up in there.
Well, of course it will, dear child. And so it should. Books tamper with man's basic, natural ignorance. Now, what could be worse than that?
But I can't burn this book. It's school property.
Nonsense! Apple sugar. You just need to get into the mood.
Books are not where it's at, teaching you how to spell cat. I know you'd rather play, so why don't you throw all your books away? Books are made for burning, the fire is already yearning to put an end to any learning.
1, 3, 5, 9, throw them in, the fire's right.
Put the books in the fire, see the flames growing higher. Burning books is our heart's desire.
2, 4, 6, 8, time to incinerate.
Books will not make you wise, and reading's bad for your eyes. I am sure you agree, so why don't you give all your books to me? Books are made for burning, fire is already yearning to put an end to any learning.
This one here is very good about a man named Robin Hood.
Put the books in the fire, see the flames growing higher. Burning books is our heart's desire.
Though I never liked Tom Sawyer, I won't be a book destroyer.
Books can only confuse, teaching you things you can't use. You should listen to me. Burning your books will set your mind free.
Books are made for burning, fire is already yearning to put an end to any learning. Put the books in the fire, see the flames growing higher. Burning books is our heart's desire. Books are made for burning, fire is already yearning to put an end to any learning. No, stop!
We're back. And thanks for watching today's show. I had, of course, I really love that song, obviously. I probably drive it into the ground, but it's so good. And it's actually so relevant nowadays. But thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed what you saw. That Seasons of Sexuality film, that's the first time I saw it, is when I showed it to you. I did watch a little bit of it, and I saw the kid's butt, but yeah, I was ready. I was afraid it was going to go further than it did, but it didn't, thankfully. So this is why I do this show, is so that I can pull films that I haven't seen and watch them. So thank you for being there for that. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. There's a notification bell. There's other ways to show that you like this. You can also give money via the Super Thanks feature, or the Super Chat, or I don't even know what they call it nowadays. You can also go to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are ways to also purchase or give us money so that we can spend it on cardboard boxes, tape, the storage units that we have, of which we have 4 now, etc., etc. And yes, WB Wolf, you brought this up. The 1,000th minute, 1,000th show is going to be celebrated on the 23rd of this month. That's the Saturday before Christmas. We're going to do 1,000 minutes. So it's going to go from, like, I don't know, 9 a.m. till 3 in the morning ish, and we're gonna watch a bunch of films. Hopefully stuff we've never seen before. We might sneak some other stuff in there, but yeah, it's gonna be a big epic event, and we'll also be doing a fundraiser for shelving. Anyways, everybody have a great weekend. Take care of yourself. What is the thing that I can't find it? I had it written down somewhere. I can't find it now. The thing that Michael Landon said about taking care of yourself and being kind to other people. But do that, even if I don't have the exact words. But everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday. Now, real quickly, if you're in Raleigh, I'm doing screening at Lump tonight, kind of intermittently between noise bands and art sales. It's kind of a fundraiser for Lump Gallery, who have been supporting me for a long time, and we'll be showing very awkward films there that they requested. So, everybody, we'll see you soon. Bye.